Hey y'all, look who's back, back again with another spin. Look who's back, look who's back, look who's back, look who's back. Ain't that how that song go? Na 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 na. Anyways, I'm too old to know the lyrics to that song, but I'm back with another review. Not a review. What am I talking about? A reaction. That's it. That other R word. Another reaction, but this time I want to react to TikTok scary stories. One reason why is because I want to say this. Didn't y'all have a heart attack though about TikTok? Wasn't y'all acting a fool about TikTok? I ain't gonna say y'all because I don't know y'all, but the people that I saw acting a blame fool about TikTok. Y'all, child, my baby girl called me crying, talking about her life is over. This is the end, she said. I had to call and make sure everything was okay. TikTok went away for as long as it take to say TikTok. And then they like, I'm back. Here I am. Did you miss me? Child, people that had left crying and walked on over to what is it called? Red notebook. One of those red book, one of them. Anyways, they went over there and found out they had been lied to. Hoodwinked, I said. Bamboozled. They went over there and found out that the conspiracy theorists are right. And that we Paul compared to them folks over there living their life. We just down and in the dirt, Paul, in comparison. They went over there, found that out, and started talking about it. And then you know what happened? Somebody over here in authority said, oh no, baby, we can't have this. We can't have our people finding out what we be doing behind the scenes. So, TikTok, come on back. Come on back over here, TikTok. You can operate over here. Come on, we ain't gonna mess with you. Lord, when I tell you, I had the best laugh. Because, see, I don't have TikTok. So it didn't affect me in the way that it affected other people. I do enjoy watching the compilations from TikTok, however, but not to the extent where I would have lost my mind if TikTok disappeared. Nonetheless, some folks did. And, honey, TikTok, please, don't do that to your people.
Okay, I got one for you, and this one sounds...
Wait. Not yet, girl. Not yet, girl. Wait, hold your horses. Okay, let me set this up. I'm going to be doing a reaction video to stories compilation of scary TikToks, okay? And this video that stories compilation has posted is, my goodness, um an hour and 7 minutes. So, sweet babies, don't be mad at me if I don't make it the whole hour and 7 minutes. Maybe I'll split it up, okay? Because I know y'all got things to do. Y'all do not have time to sit here and continue to listen to me ramble on about other people's stuff. I know that, God, today. So, what I may do is just react to a few of these videos. Because I'm a mother. I have things to do, babies. Okay? All right. So let's get started. Let's get started.
not even bizarre. It just sounds like I'm crazy. So if anybody has answers as to what the fuck I seen, let me know in the comments. So we would stay at my great grandmother's house. That was huge property, by the way, like huge. And it was a family reunion. We were the first ones to get there that night. And in the room that we stayed in was a huge, huge room. It was able to fit 3 queen beds, and a wardrobe in the corner, and like our suitcases. It was a really big room. In that big room is a door that has like, if you've been to Mexico, you know what I'm talking about. It's like the windows that are blurry that are usually found in like shower doors. So like you could see like figures on the other side. It's just that it's like not clear. So this door had that window, and that door lets you use like a smaller room. So I slept on a bed with my younger sister. Keep in mind, I'm 3. So my sister has to be like 1.5, maybe 2. Which is the furthest one away from the door. It's like the very corner. Next to us is another queen bed, and that's my parents. And then across from us is another bed on the corner by that door, and it's my older sister. She's sleeping by herself on that bed. Now, this is where it gets a little crazy. So stick. I woke up in the middle of the night to tapping sounds. I remember sitting up in my bed and looking around the room like, what is that? And everybody was sleeping. My dad's snoring. Like, everybody's knocked out. All the lights are off. The only light that is in the room is the moonlight. There is a window in that big room, and it's like, I remember being so high, and the moonlight is casting in. Now, on the other side of that little small room is also a window on the same side of the wall, and you can see the moonlight also casting in that other side of the room because it's bright in there. So I remember looking into that door, that at least a little small room, right? I saw this hairy dog-shaped man. Now, remember, it wasn't clear. I only saw like the outline of his face, and I remember his face looked like a Yorkie. Like, it was a big snout, and like I could see the hair. But one thing I will never forget is its long fingers and nails. I swear to God, it was like a horror movie. Like, he was making the tapping sounds, and I could see how long his fucking nails are. And I remember him pointing at me. So he'd do this and then point at me, and then he would do this for me to come and open the door for him. Now, that sounds bizarre, but I remember him. I could see him visibly getting upset because I wasn't going to open the door. And I remember shaking my head and being like, no, I'm not going. I felt so scared, like something, I don't know what it was. It just, something was telling me, don't go open that. And I see him start getting frustrated and walking back and forth. So he would like walk that way, past the window, walk that way, past the, so start pacing around. And then he'd stop at the door again, at that little window, and start tapping again. And would just continue to point and have point down so for me to open the door. I remember that my parents said that I woke them up. I was screaming. That I kept saying that there was a dog man. There's a dog man outside the window. My dad thought it was a man, like trying to lure me outside. And so he hopped on the roof that is like right by that window where my sister's at. And no one seen anything. So my mom had to calm me down. She said that she went back to bed. She put me back to bed. But I remember like the lights going on, and he wasn't there anymore. As soon as the lights go off, everybody falls back to sleep. He starts tapping again, and he's there again. I remember I was so petrified that I slept with the covers over my head, and I woke up the next morning. And apparently, I wasn't the only family member who has seen this dog man on the property. 2 other people that I know in my family, like distant relatives, have also seen what this creature was, and they actually seen it, like its face. To this day, I don't know what the fuck it was. I don't know if it's like, it just felt, whatever it was, it felt ancient. I don't know what it was. But if I close my eyes, I can put myself back there, and I remember vividly what he was doing, how he was pacing, how he looked, those nails, the fingers. It was something like fucking Pennywise would do. I have not stayed in that property in like 20 plus years. But yeah, if anybody knows what it was, what it possibly may be, let me know.
Thoughts? Anyone? What did she see? Any idea? Anyone? I have no idea what she saw, but she saw something. Something that motions to her to open the door. And she said, what's that she said? She said, something told her, don't open the door. Baby, that something was your soul. Your soul said, look, I have to go where you go. So I'm going to warn you that if you go and open this door, we are no longer going to be friends. We are no longer going to be companions. You will be somewhere else, and I will be in another place. Don't open the door. Number one, for a 3-year old baby, you had a whole lot of sense. It's 3-year olds that got more sense than adults because an adult would have hopped up and opened the door just to see if something was on the other side. Then months later, wonder why everything flying around in their room and in their house, stuff moving, and they hearing voices. Cause you let something in, baby. Child, please. Get it for future reference. If you hear knocking at your door, don't just open the door. Take my word for it. Listen. Go, if you got a peephole in the door, look out the door. If there's nobody there, or if there is something there that looks like a dog man, for the love of life, don't open the door. Don't open the door. You will let something in. Ask a friend that knows. They'll tell you. Don't open the door. Let's continue.
All right, then. My name is Darren Robinson. I'm one of the guitar players in the band Phantom Planet, best known for our song California, in case you're unfamiliar. I do have a couple of ghost stories. The first one I'm going to tell it will be in this video, and it's sort of what got me started, not necessarily believing in the paranormal, but maybe thinking that there's something to it. The other two videos that I'm going to upload will be connected, and they're pretty amazing. So with that being said, when I was in 8th grade, I had a friend named Corey, and I met him in junior high. And I found out not too long after getting to know him that he actually was a neighborhood friend and I could walk to his house from my parents' place. So in 8th grade, he invited me to one of his birthday parties that was just me, him, and one of his neighborhood friends. It was just a very small get together. And we were hanging out at his house all day. It was very hot because it was in June, I believe. It was a very hot summer month. And there was no air conditioning in his house, just a couple of fans. So, we were pretty hot the majority of the time that we were there. And, we messed around throughout the day. And as night approached, Corey said, I have a Ouija board here that was my grandmother's. And it's...
No, immediately no. No. When Corey said that you should have packed up your little duffel bag and went back home because before you got there, Corey was playing with the Ouija board, and it's already things floating around in Corey's residence. If you don't need it, you don't need it following you home. You should have told Corey, no, Corey, I will see you when school starts back in the fall. Okay? What the world? Who does that? Who? Crazy people. That's who. Crazy people and careless children. That's who do that.
up on the highest shelf. We never use it. And by the way, she died in that room also. Now, Corey was a bit of a prankster, so I didn't really believe him necessarily. But it was interesting regardless. And I figured I would go along with it since it was his birthday and we were just trying to have some fun. So we get up, we go into the game room, we go up onto the highest shelf, we pull down the Ouija board, which is a very old Ouija board. This is not like a Parker Brothers, you go and buy it for $15. This was not one of those. This was definitely an ancient, earlier Ouija board, and really well made, beautiful board actually. And we took it, we went into the dining room, which was, 20 feet away, 25 feet away, put it down, put our fingers on the planchette, or the pointer, whatever you want to call it. And I remember looking at Corey and just saying, okay, I'll ask the questions. And I asked, and I said, who's with us? And after a couple of minutes, finally it started to move. Of course, I thought Corey was moving it, being a prankster and all. And he looked at me with this like dumbfounded look on his face. And I could tell he wasn't joking around. So eventually it said, my name is Sue. Sue was Corey's grandmother's name, the one that died in the house in the game room. So initially, again, it was very hard for me to believe that we were actually talking to Sue, but I figured I'd go along with it. Asked a couple more questions, and eventually I said, do you have any, what was it I said? Do you have any messages you want to give to us before I ask specific things? And she said, yes, I love you. Now, Corey said that when she died in the room, her last words were, I love you. So I took this as she was just getting out those final words once and for all, which was kind of interesting. And so that was the first thing that happened. Not much, but it gets a lot more interesting. I asked Corey's grandmother, I said, are you in heaven right now? And it should be known, I'm not a religious person. No offense to anybody who is, but I don't necessarily believe in heaven and hell and the concept of it. I'm open, but she said that she was in heaven and that she wasn't very happy. And that kind of took me aback. I'm like, why would she not be happy if she's in heaven? And immediately it came across my mind that maybe it's because she's not with her loved ones that are here. And I asked her that, and she said, yes, like I got it right. So finally, I'm like, okay, enough is enough. Can you prove that we're talking to you? Is there something you can do? And I also said, what is it like in heaven? And she paused for a second and then finally spelled out, go into Corey's room in 5 minutes. I swear to you, the thing was moving around real fast and it was talking essentially in paragraphs, which was a lot different than just the one word, yes or no responses. And so I look at Corey, he looks at me, I'm just like, come on, man. She had a concept of earthly time. Like the whole thing didn't make any sense. And I could tell again by the look on his face that he was a little fearful and he wasn't quite sure what was going on. So I went along with it. After 5 minutes, we look at each other. We walk over to his room, which was another 25 steps away or whatever. And his door was closed. I'm like, all right, it added to the suspense. And eventually Corey finally, turns the knob and we go inside. And no joke, the room was at least 30 degrees cooler than the rest of the house. And again, no air conditioning. There were fans in the house, but there were no fans in his room, so that made it even weirder. But aside from that, there was also a mist in the room. And when I say a mist, imagine walking into a room filled with smoke. That's what it felt like. But it wasn't smoke in the sense that you couldn't breathe. There was nothing obstructing our throats. So it was very easy to breathe, but we were looking around almost like able to move these clouds around, for lack of a better word. And we look at each other. This all happened very fast. And we just start screaming because we were scared to death. We didn't know what was going on. And eventually his mom ran in the room. She's like, what is going on? She started to yell at us because she thought that we lit off fireworks in the room, which is something that Corey and I were known for doing. He actually had a way of making homemade fireworks. And we were just like bad kids at certain points. So she started yelling at us and we're like, no. We were using the Ouija board. We contacted your mom. Apparently, she told us to come in here and now the room is cold and there's clouds that we don't understand. And she saw it all and felt the room. So she was like, okay, I'm going to follow you guys back into the back to where the Ouija board is, and I'm going to watch you do it, and I'm going to kind of gauge what's going on. So we leave the room, end up getting the Ouija board and putting it in the living room, which was in between where we were doing it and in between Corey's room. So it was right in the center of everything. Put it on the couch. His mom is on one side of the table, and Corey and I are sitting on the couch using the board. And I said, since it's Corey's birthday, is there anybody else here? Are there any other relatives here that we can talk to? And Sue immediately said yes. And then there was like a pause, as if it was like someone on a phone and they were looking for someone to hand the receiver over to. And eventually, after maybe 15 seconds, the pointer starts going really erratically, and it's moving differently than it had when Sue apparently had been moving it. And finally, it just says something to the extent of, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something like, "What's up, assholes?" or "How are you sons of bitches doing?" It was very sarcastic and it was graphic. And I kind of laughed, and I look at Corey, I'm like, come on, man. Like, it's calling us names here. And Corey's mom looks at us. She's like, "All right, what did it say?" And I told her. She goes, "No way." She goes, "Ask him what his name is." I'm like, okay. And before I could ask, it's like it heard Corey's mom ask, and it started to answer her, even with Corey and I having our fingers on the board. And it spelled out Jerry. And Jerry was Corey's uncle that he had never met before, who had that exact personality. He would call people assholes, sons of bitches. That was just his personality. And it kind of blew his mom away. And so that's part one of the story. The next two parts that I'm going to tell you are not connected to this specific story, but they will blow your mind. They're even more mind-blowing than what I've just told you. So stay tuned.
Okay, part one. Again, I ask why do that? I think if people grasp the idea of the reality of when people pass on, those souls do pass on, and that anything that is interacting with them here still are things that have always been here, things that can't move on, things that are imprisoned here in this space. You know what? Even in saying that and people realizing this, it would still be some dumb people wanting to communicate with those things. So it wouldn't matter one bit. They would not care. But I I I just couldn't. I wouldn't. I would not dare play with anything like that. It's not a good look.
Here we go, part two. So part one, I discuss my introduction to Ouija boards, and this is going to be now where the stories all intertwine with each other. So back around the time that I was about 21 or 22, which was quite a while ago, I went to my friend Carlene's house, and she lived 30 miles north of where I was. And she always had kind of like a psychic vibe about her. Not that she could tell the future so much, but she was just kind of like an empath, I guess is what you would call her. And she was very open to ghosts and the paranormal and all that stuff, as was I. But we both didn't necessarily believe, as I explained in the first video. Anyway, at one point we were at her place. This was her mom's house. And we decided to go up to her room and get the Ouija board out. And we did it. And while we're sitting there waiting for the pointer to move, I asked if anybody was there. And the first person, or first spirit, I guess, whatever you want to call it, came through and said his name was Don, as in Donald. And that's significant because my grandfather on my dad's side, his name was Donald. And I called him Grandpa Don. And he was very into supernatural stuff. When he was alive, I used to talk to him about Ouija boards. and he always told me not to use them, just because he believed that they can open a doorway to something bad. But I didn't listen to him, and I decided to try them anyway, and apparently I contacted him.
Grandpa Don, when he's alive, told you don't mess with Ouija boards because they could be doorways to something else. So while you're on the Ouija board, ignoring completely what Grandpa Don told you not to do, something comes through and tells you that it is Donald, and you are assuming that it's Grandpa Don. Why would Grandpa Don go against his own advice and come and talk to you on a Ouija board? No, like I said, previous times, familiar spirits, they are around the people that have passed on, they were around them. And while you're walking around on earth right now, in this moment, there's a familiar spirit somewhere watching your every move. Heck, he might be talking to his own familiar spirit, telling him what he's giving him clues that only he would know, because then it will be he'll be more open to it. He'll accept what is coming from this board, not realizing that what's feeding you the information has been around you since you took your first breath on this earth. Y'all keep on playing. Keep it. Keep on.
And so we're sitting there, and I said, before we get started, this is just like the first story I told you, and then I said, do you have any messages for us before I ask you any questions? And I think he just said something to the extent of, I love you also. He was just being polite, you know? And so I was like, okay. And I said, well, how about this? Is there anything you could do to prove that we're talking to you? Is there something physical you could do that would really make us believe we're speaking with you? And without hesitation, he said, turn on channel 36, because there was a TV in her room. And oddly enough, my favorite number is 36, and it always has been since I was very young, for many different reasons. So I look at Carlene, and I'm like, all right, let's turn on the channel, on the TV, channel 36. So we turn it on, and Robin Williams is on TV with two kids in the snow. I forget what movie this is, so I can't give you that reference, but anybody who knows Robin Williams movies, if you know him being in the snow with two kids, you can probably find the scene. Anyway, it's him in the snow, and I look at Carly, and I'm like, I don't know why he's telling us to turn this on. And we put our fingers back on the pointer, and I said, Dawn, can you tell us why we're turning on channel 36? What's the significance here? And just as I said that the second time, all of a sudden Robin Williams looks at the boy in the snow, and he goes, Donald. 3 times he said my grandfather's name. And the timing of that was just like spooky, right? So I look at Carly, and I'm like, that's scary. That's a little scary. And finally I said to her, or I said to Dawn, I said, okay, do you have any messages for us now? Because now we believe that we're talking to you. And he said, he spelled out Sam, LAX, drunk. Now, Sam is the bass player in Phantom Planet. That he's always been in the band. And he's in Maroon 5 now, of all bands. And he's also in our band. And Sam likes to drink, but he's not a big drunk or anything like that, and he's super responsible. But I took it as Sam is at the airport and he's drunk, so don't let him drive. So I started thinking, like, okay, how do I contact Sam? I tried calling him, couldn't reach him. And then I called Adam Levine, of all people. This is before he was famous. They lived together. So we've known Adam and Maroon 5 for many years, which is why Sam is in their band currently. And I call Adam, and he answers the phone. I'm like, hey, I didn't tell him anything about the Ouija board because I didn't want him to think I was absolutely out of my mind. And I said, where are you right now? And he goes, I'm driving. I'm going to the airport. I'm like, you're going to the airport? Where are you going? Why are you going to the airport? He's like, oh, I'm going to pick up Sam. It's like, holy shit. Okay. So I didn't know Sam was at the airport at this time. And obviously it was the Ouija board that informed me. So I said, listen, when you get Sam, if he's drunk, just do me a favor and don't let him drive. He's like, yeah, of course. I'm not going to let him drive if he's drunk. He's like, you're scaring me, by the way. And then we hung up, and that was that. 30 minutes later, 45 minutes later, whatever, Sam calls me. And he goes, okay, first of all, you scared the shit out of Adam. What's that about? And he goes, and how did you know I was at the airport? And how did you know that I was drunk? I'm like, oh, I don't know. I didn't tell him the story. I just said, oh, something came over me and I figured I might as well act on it than regret it later. And he's like, well, you know me, I like to get a little buzz, but I'm not driving. I'm not, I would never do that. I was like, okay. And so that was that story. What else happened that night? I think that was it. At Carlene's house, that was it. So I ended up going back to my parents' place a couple days later, and I went with Carlene, and we brought the Ouija board because I told my parents what had happened, and they're open to. None of us are religious, but they're definitely open to the idea of it maybe being real. But they wanted to see it, and I'm like, cool. We'll see if I could contact my dad's grandfather or my dad's dad, my grandfather, my dad's dad. And if I can, then we'll do it, and you guys can ask them questions. So sure enough, we get to my parents' place. We get the Ouija board out. My parents are sitting on the couch. There's a coffee table that the Ouija board is on, and then Carlene and I are on the other side, sitting on the floor with our hands on the pointer. And I said, can we talk to Don? And not much hesitation, he came through again, strongly, by the way. And I asked him a couple questions. One of them, by the way, was I said, I'm in Phantom Planet now. I'm in this band. This is really early on. And I said, do we have any songs on this new record? Because we had just made the record that California was on called The Guest. Do we have any singles on this record? And he spelled out California and Lonely Day. And those two songs were singles off that record. So that was interesting, but that's not where it ends. So the end of this part 2 is when my parents kind of huddle together, and I can tell they're like thinking of a question to ask. And while Carlene and I have our fingers on the board, my parents asked the question, and they said, all right, if you're Don, how did you die? Now, I was told that he had emphysema because he was a cigarette smoker, and that he passed away because of that. And I was convinced that that's what it was. And Carlene didn't know the answer. She didn't know who Don was. And so we sit there for a minute, and it starts answering my parents. We didn't have to ask. Carlene and I didn't have to ask the question. My parents asked. And it spelled out emphysema. Or no, it spelled out vein in head. And I look at Carlene, and I'm like, vein in head? That's not right. And my parents didn't hear it. They look at me. They're like, all right, what did he say? And I said, well, it spelled out vein in head. And man, this freaks me out. But my parents looked at me like dumbfounded. Their faces went pale white, and they said, this is impossible. You didn't know that because we told you he had emphysema, and he did have emphysema. But then they proceeded to tell me that the doctor told him that he had a vein in his head that if it ruptured, he would pass away, and it would be a pretty peaceful way to go, but also it would just be like instant, And so that's what it said. And my dad also told me that when they found my grandfather at his place in Oxnard, California, that they found him on the couch, still holding a newspaper, sitting upright, and they said that it looked like he had just a peaceful exit into the afterlife. So that's part 2. Part 3 gets even crazier, and it has everything to do with what I've just told you. So stay tuned, and stay tuned. It gets really interesting. All right, guys, this is part 3. This is where everything comes together from part 2. So hopefully you've seen part 2, you remember everything about it, and here we go. In the early 2000s, my band Phantom Planet played at the House of Blues in Chicago, and after the show, we went outside. The band was doing pretty well at the time, and we were signing autographs and doing that whole thing. And while we were doing that, in the very back, all the way the back, there was a girl who was kind of staring at me. And it was a very intense, almost like she was staring through me kind of a vibe. And it didn't creep me out, but I knew that I wanted to talk to her, and I figured I would get to her last, just so I could have a real conversation with her. So, I'm looking on the left side of me, the right side of me, getting all the autographs done, saying hello to everybody. Finally, I get to her. I'm like, all right, what's your deal? Like, something's up. I could see it in your eyes. And she looks at me and she goes, would you believe me if I said I was a psychic? Or just that she was psychic. And I'm like, well, I'm open to it. If you have any good stories, I'm definitely open to it. And she looks at me a little bit more and she goes, have you ever used a Ouija board before? And that really, this is early on when the internet wasn't a thing, so there's no way she could have known anything. I had never told my stories online, especially at that point. And so I look at her and I'm like, yeah, actually, I have used a Ouija board and I have some crazy stories. She's like, yeah, I thought so. She goes, how about this? My name is Siobhan, and if you feel comfortable, give me your email address, and if I ever have any stories to tell you, I'll just email you and I'll share it with you, and you could write back or you don't have to bother, whatever you want. I'm like, all right, no harm there. So I gave her my email address, and we get back from that tour. I get home, a couple days pass, and then I check my email, and sure enough, there is a message from Siobhan, the first one. So there's 3 messages that she gave me consecutively, so 3 days in a row. The first message said, she gave me a story about her on the freeway and this whole thing, and I'm not going to tell that story just because it doesn't really further this, but it was a pretty incredible story. And she's like, I also did the Ouija board the other night, and this guy named Don contacted me. And she told me this, and I'm reading this, and I'm like, holy shit. She doesn't know my grandfather's name was Don, or that I've apparently contacted him through Ouija boards, and I have all these stories. So I was pretty amazed when she said that. But then she went on to say that she asked her friend if maybe it was her dad or a relative, and her friend said no. And then she told me that her father's name was Don, but he was still alive, so that didn't make any sense. And at that point, I just decided to not tell her that my grandfather's name was Don, just to see what would happen, So I wrote her back, and I just told her that was, really cool stories. If she has anything else, just let me know. And that was that. Next day, I wake up, go to my email. Sure enough, there's another message from her. And what was this message? The second message was, I'm trying to remember because there's 3 in a row. She said, do you by any chance have any sisters? And I said, no. I wrote her back. I'm like, no, I have one sister, but that's it. She's like, well, Dawn asked me to say hi to Stacy and Lori. So Stacy's my sister's name and Lori's my mom's name. She thought it was 2 sisters. Again, this information wasn't online, so she got the names right and kind of blew my mind. And so that was that. Third day, I wake up, and this is where the story ends. And man, it freaks me out still saying this. It kind of makes me tear up sometimes, but I've told it so many times that I could probably do it without having that happen. She writes me the third day, and she says, Don contacted me again, and he said to tell the boy I say hello, and say hi to Harv for me. So my grandpa Don called me the boy to my parents, and my dad's name is Harvey, and my grandfather never called him Harvey. He only called him Harv, Harv. And again, this information was not online. There was no way she could have known it. And this was the 3rd day in a row that she had written to me. And then at the very end of this, she said, there was one more thing that happened, one more thing that he said, but I really don't think this relates to you at all. I just think it's an interesting story. Does Robin Williams have any significance to you? And it's giving me goosebumps right now. It freaked me out and confirmed that there's something going on here, It's like you don't really believe in ghosts or paranormal stuff until you have a firsthand experience like what I had. And for what it's worth, I'm still friends with Siobhan to this day. She's actually in the Phantom Planet Patreon, so we still talk. I'm still friends with my friend Carlene, who I mentioned in part 2. And I still actually know Corey, who was my junior high friend from the first part of this story. But does Robin Williams have any significance to you is like absolute confirmation to me. I told my parents afterwards and was just freaking out, and they were convinced at that point. So I think that's it. I think that's the whole.
I'm curious. What significance could Robin Williams hold for you other than you turning on the television and Robin Williams was with some kids in the snow? Huh. Why didn't you go into detail in this third part about how Robin Williams holds significance for you, sir? I want to know. Inquiring minds want to know. I feel like you're holding something back. I feel like you're leapfrogging over crucial information. But it is yours to keep. Carry on.
Whole story, but pretty good stuff. Okay, so there's one more thing that I didn't mention. After the second email that I got from Siobhan, when she said, who's Stacy and who's Lori, I then told her that my grandfather's name was Don and that I had contacted him through the Ouija board. So that was why she said, I don't think this story relates to you, but does Robin Williams have any significance? Man, it still freaks me out. Anyway, that's part 3. That's all my stories. And enjoy.
Okay, I have video footage of this. I will share it at the end. Nobody thinks it's real. Like, it seems like it's doctored footage, but it's not. I swear on my life. Basically, both my sister and my old roommate used to work at this, like, music school daycare center for kids in the Upper East Side. The music classes would happen upstairs, but downstairs in the basement, there was this, like, daycare situation, and you had to work down there. And they both hated being down there. And I'd been down there a few times too. It is really scary. Like, you know when you just get a feeling about a place? Like, that is the basement. It was horrible. They would both, like, hear voices when their co-teacher hadn't showed up yet. Or, like, the cleaner would go downstairs and all the toys would be arranged in, like, a circle. And she'd be, like, in tears being like, are you guys playing a prank on me? I seriously, like, I don't feel safe here. And the kids would all say really creepy shit. Like, they'd say, like, there's a really, like, mean guy in, like, the tunnel, like, a little play tunnel thing. Or, like there's, like, someone mean over in, like, the dark corner of the basement. So when COVID hit, obviously no one was going into the daycare. It essentially shut down. But the owners installed cameras just in case, like, anything happened while they weren't there. And it picked up the most insane shit ever. It's 1.5 minutes long, so here you go.
kind. Whatever is in there needed to expend some energy. Like, with it being shut down and the children no longer in there, for it to migrate between and collect their joyful energy, it had to, I don't know, throw a tantrum. I don't know. But whenever children tell you they see this, that, or the third, inquire further. Talk to your children. Man, it no. I wonder if they showed that video to the parents of the kids that go to the daycare. Because I would want to know if my child is going to daycare school with the unseen, where they can be potentially harmed. No, probably not. But if a parent saw this video, nah.
Okay, so if you know me, you know that I grew up in a haunted house. I've got stories for days. The things that I experienced in that house are absolutely terrifying. Even the things that have happened to me since I've moved out of that house, we could definitely talk about those. But today I want to talk about one of my mom's stories from her childhood, because it literally sounds like a horror movie, like straight up nightmare fuel. Made me absolutely terrified of closets as a child. So yeah, when I saw this trend going around, I thought I would share the story. My mom gave me permission. So yeah. So my mom has a sister, my aunt, we'll call her Mary for the story. Mary would sleepwalk regularly, which in my opinion, terrifying already. But one night my mom was sleeping in her bed and she's woken up in the middle of the night. I don't think she realizes that it was like sleep paralysis in the moment, but she is awake and staring at my aunt, her sister, in the doorway of her room, just staring at her. And my mom tries to speak and get her attention, but she is like frozen and can't even get words out. So she just is like locked on her sister, and Mary slowly walks into the room and turns and walks to my mom's closet, walks into the closet, looks at my mom. Oh God, it gives me chills. She smiles, and how do I say this without getting flagged on here? She, also trigger warning, like herself, and like horrifying, absolutely horrifying. My mom is trying to scream like bloody murder, but can't get anything out. And she feels like it's going on forever. Like trying to scream and seeing your sister like that, like it's just, oh my God, like sounds so traumatic, especially as a child, to like see your sister like that. Yeah, so she is screaming, which she feels like is forever, and finally she's able to speak, and her parents, my grandparents, come running into the room, and they're like, you know, what's wrong? And all my mom could say is, Mary's in the closet, Mary's in the closet, Mary's in the closet. And so her parents walk over to the closet, turn on the light, oh God, and it's empty. And they say, What are you talking about? Mary is in her bed asleep. Ugh, I hate it. I hate it so much. Like, come on. That's some like shit. Like, what the? Oh my God. Absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. So yeah, I joke with my mom that she's the one who brought the energy into our home because she was the only one who understood all the stuff that was happening in our house growing up and that I was experiencing, which we could talk about another time. But yeah, crazy stuff.
Okay, y'all, this is going to be the end of part one. I will do a part two to the rest with the rest of the compilations on this channel, Stories Compilations YouTube channel. But I think I'm going to cut it off right there. And the young lady that we just saw reminded me of something that happened to me when I was a little girl. So I think I'll share that with you and then I'll close out the video. So, and I'll probably told this story, I'm not sure, but I'm going to tell it again. So, when I was about 8 or 9 years old, my family moved to what I consider now my childhood home because it's the last house that we lived in as kids. We all grew up there and then ventured out from there. So at 9 years old, we moved into this house, and it wasn't. I mean, for the time, it wasn't really an old house. We keep in mind this was like in the my goodness, maybe 1980. Like I said, I've done some living. So this is like 1981 or something like that, 80 or 81. But the house was built in 1945, 44 or 45. So we move into this house. It's me, my little brother, my mom, and my dad. And of course, when you move into a new house that's new to you, as kids, you're running around and you're exploring and you're picking rooms and fighting over who gets what and all this, that, and the third. So me and my little brother, we were doing that all day while my parents were moving and setting the house up. So the room that my brother chose had this sliding closet doors in it, and one side you can slide to the left, and when it you slide it to the left, it makes a boom sound, like you can hear it open, and then close it, it makes the same sound. You can do the same thing to the left side, slide it to the right, and when it stops, it goes boom, and close it and it makes the same sound. So we were playing in it because it was one long closet space on the inside. So we were playing inside of that closet all day long. We had set up little tents in the closet. This was going to be our hideout in this closet. We had deemed it so, and it was going to be that. So the day comes to a close. We've had our supper and everything, and taken baths and called it a night. So that night, we didn't sleep in the rooms that we had chosen because our beds and stuff hadn't been set up. Our rooms hadn't been set up. So we slept in the living room on a pull-out couch. Of course, I'm excited. So I'm just lying there, just thinking about all of the things that I'm going to do when everything is set up in my room. I'm having trouble falling asleep. But my brother, who's next to me, he's already gone. He's out. He's asleep. And I'm assuming my parents are as well because I don't hear them talking anymore. So I'm lying there, and as I'm slowly drifting away to sleep, I hear boom, boom, because that's the sound the closet door makes when you open it. boom, boom, over and over and over. And I'm nudging my brother, like I'm practically pinching him. And he wakes up and he's like, "What?" I said, "Do you hear that?" And he listens and it's going boom, boom. And he looks at me and he says, "Is that the closet door?" I said, "Yes." We lay awake that whole night waiting for the good Lord's sun to hit the skyline so we could go and tell our parents what we heard. And needless to say, they claim they didn't hear anything. But my brother and I, we both heard it. And my whole childhood, living in that house, there would be things that happened that my mother would experience, but she would never talk about. And we couldn't explain, but my brother took that room with the sliding door closets. I guess he just grew out of being afraid of being back there because it was at the back of the house. That was his room. And then a few feet away was my room. I never went into that room at night. I never went into that room without someone with me. And the door that led to that room that connected to my room, I kept shut. I when I tell you I think that might have been my first real experience being aware that there was something else around me that I could not see, experience. And from that day forward, there have been many, many, many more countless ones that I would love to share with you, but I won't. I won't be doing that today. But I will from time to time. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for spending time with me. Thank you for sitting there listening to me ramble on and enjoying the compilations that this stories compilation YouTube channel has been so graciously uh, able to compile of all the TikTok stories and put up for us to watch. I appreciate them. I appreciate them allowing me to react to these videos. So until next time, I'll see ya. Take care.